Welcome once again to PKN's live stream of interviews that are being conducted at the AIP Australasian Packaging Conference 2025 and beyond, with this interview being brought to us thanks to Ball and Doggett. Lindy, keep it going.
Yeah, here we go again. But it is great because now we've got some news that was spoken about yesterday by Liza Vernalls from Yates, and we also have joining us Jessica Ansell from OF Packaging. And we're going to be talking about flexible pouch breakthroughs and the movement to monomaterials. So I'm going to start with you, Jess, because OF Packaging is a printer and converter of flexible pouch materials. You make a heap of different types and sizes of pouches. You've got a beautiful display here, and we've written about them often enough. But tell us what the latest trends are when it comes to flexible pouches.
Thanks, Lindy. Obviously, sustainability is everyone's key, trend for flexibles, especially because the challenges that flexible materials have in comparison to some rigid containers. One main thing, which we'll discuss shortly, is recycled content. It's a struggle to get recycled content in high volumes into flexible films, just the way films are created and blown and made and laminated and printed. All of those processes for converting flexible packaging require some really uniquely made materials, and that's what flexibles have to this point been crafted to do. They've been crafted to perform through these processes as efficiently as possible and to provide some really high functioning, lower cost and performative packaging. The downside is because of the immense thinness of a lot of these films, getting recycled content into things that we're talking microns of thicknesses is a challenge compared to something like a big rigid container or bottle, tubs and trays. There's a lot more benefits that you can get out of those kind of products with recycled content than what you can typically get with flexibles. So that's been our main challenge recently. We've already got, in terms of just recyclable films and monomaterials, we've already got materials that function in a mono space for most packaging items. So that's something we've ticked off as a project list that we've kind of completed in terms of getting recyclability out of films. And we can provide that for 99% of functions. The only thing left on the cards is really retort at a commercialized scale for retort packaging. To get that to work on every single retort line has been a challenge in a mono space. But we've kind of ticked off the mono side of making packaging recyclable and out of one type of plastic. Yeah. So now we're trying to work on recycled content in flexibles, which is getting the amount of highest percentage possible and looking at both post-industrial sources as well as post-consumer sources, which is where we really need to be.
So, Lisa, yesterday you joined Close the Loop Group in a discussion, and during that discussion you were speaking about, you work with Yates, and you were speaking about something new that's on the market. Can you tell us a bit more?
Yes, we're very excited to announce that after, I would say, a good 12 months of work, we've cracked it. So we've just gone across 5 SKUs across Weed and Feed, Dynamic Lifter and Hortico brands.
So that's this one, is it? I'm going to hold it up to the camera.
It is a 60% recycled content bag.
Wow.
The mix is a mix of post-industrial recycled resin and post-consumer recycled resin. So very good start. Does this mean we stop there? Absolutely no. We really want to push more into the PCR space. And so we'll continue to work with OF Pack to incorporate more of that into the bags. We also have another 26 SKUs that are due to go for a quite significant artwork upgrade and change. And as this happens, we'll roll out that 60% PCR and PIR across that range. Yeah.
So, Jess, I know some people say, oh, well, that was industrial, post-industrial waste. It's still waste. It's still got to be used. And the advantage of using it, but otherwise, where's it going to end up, is that it is a slightly cleaner feedstock. Am I right?
Yeah, and there's also different grades. So one thing we don't like to claim as recycled content is your basic remill, I guess, which is when a packaging company would have a film that they might do offcuts of a very plain 100% PE, a polyethylene film, and then they might put that back into their own machine and rate grind it down again. Sometimes that's classed as recycled content in a remill space.
Yeah.
That's sort of a little bit more of that, I guess, kind of cheating aspect, I guess, of recycled content.
Yes,
we like to focus more on offcuts and things from other industries that couldn't be used again that we can then at least reuse. It is a cleaner feedstock, and it is typically mono-based materials, which makes it easier to use, which is where the PCR stuff is a little bit more complicated. And again, for flexibles, as we know, a lot of consumer retail packaging is multiple layers of different films laminated together, which makes it hard to recycle. This makes it also hard to then get really good quality PCR feedstock in monopolymers that we can then reuse back into packaging. So that's why at the moment we are sort of looking at what those balances are. Funnily enough, we have done a test and trial here in Australia using Australian waste on a 70% post-consumer feedstock. That post-consumer feedstock was a mix of flexible post-consumer packaging, like what you would get typically from a retail space, as well as agricultural piping that had been used and was ready to be discarded. So those two feedstocks, we've actually been able to get into a film blowing process at quite a high percentage. And we'll still keep working on that and potentially down the track providing that to someone like Yates to put into their packaging.
Now, Lisa, yesterday in the discussion, which I unfortunately wasn't able to attend, what were the other key takeouts around that whole closed loop discussion that was happening in the panel that you were part of?
I think some key takeouts for me is something I'm really passionate about. We've got to stop calling good packaging and bad packaging. Packaging has its functionality, and it can be good or bad depending on how you measure it. So if you're doing footprinting, it could be really horrendous. If you're doing recycled content or recycling, it can be good. So I think there's just certain decisions that you make with your packaging that will have a latent impact. But as long as you're doing something and pushing in the right direction, that's a good thing. Reducing packaging is always a really good strategy, makes good business sense. We're talking about the triple bottom line, good for the planet, good for profit, good for people. But there's other things where it's these hidden kind of things, which is what excited us so much about OFPAC's offering, is things like recycled content. There's a lot of technology behind that, but the ultimate performance characteristic on the line hasn't changed, is a win-win for us. So you get some good carbon reduction because you're using recycled content, but there's no slowing down of a line or having to change fundamentally your artwork in order to implement it.
Now, Jess, the other thing I did want to mention, congratulations. Last night you were awarded the Australian Bioplastics Association Scholarship.
Yes.
And what does this mean for you now?
Obviously, I have a lot of experience now in the flexible space. And for me, I'm kind of a perpetual student in many ways, one of those classic millennial traits, I think, that I love to learn and continue to upskill myself. And the areas that I don't work with day to day are things like rigid containers and fiberboard as well. So I'm hoping through the scholarship allows me to undertake a certificate in packaging through the AIP course, and I'll be able to upskill myself in those areas and provide a more holistic view for myself as a packaging person now, but also for our clients who, often flexible and rigid come in cohesion a lot. You'll have bags and boxes, you have lidding film on trays. There are lots of things I'd like to learn in this space. So I'm excited to go on that journey for the next year or so.
And Lisa, lastly from you, what has been your impressions of the conference?
It has been, I've been in the packaging industry for a long time, and I've known a lot of people across various companies for the past 10 years. So wonderful just to have everybody here. I think there is such richness in conversations that you can have with people face to face. Love the fact that there's all around beyond 2025. I'm an innovator at heart, so anything new and exciting. And then just that whole focus on circularity. I think we've had a wealth of really great speakers over here that have made me stop and think about things differently. So it's been a very rewarding and wonderful conference.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for joining me. It's been great to see you in person and to chat to you here on the podcast.
Thanks, Lindy.
Thank you, ladies, and thanks to everyone who's tuned in live to this PKN interview that was conducted at the AIP Conference 2025 and beyond. And we'll be back in the not-too-distant future with another informative discussion brought to you by Ball and Doggett. But for now, stay tuned to this channel.